Oh, here we go. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome down to Security Rabbit Hole to another edition of your favorite cybersecurity podcast. The one that is not afraid, as Patrick would say, to touch the third rail. I often enjoy having guests that like to put a finger in the eye of the fairly complacent industry that just likes to churn money. So this is a good place to start. And I told Rob I bought these socks just for this podcast. I love them. All right. Anyway, Jim's here.
For
James
those who
is
don't
here.
know, there's a backstory there. But
There is. I'll let you tell it. Robert, welcome, man. RSnake.
Years ago, we were having dinner, and I'm just looking over, and I'm hearing Raph do this like long thing explaining why there's definitely aliens. And at first I thought he was kidding. I'm like, he's got to be kidding. There's just no way he's serious about this. But then he's on it, and I'm like, everything you're saying is like either very disprovable or like it's tangential evidence or whatever. And so I just like, are you seriously truly believing in aliens right now? Is that what's happening here? And like the whole table was just in on it, and it was a big old conspiracy theory.
Listen, it is Rob, it is mathematically improbable that we are alone in this vast universe.
I didn't say a universe. You were like saying aliens were like on the planet or something. I'm like, no.
I mean, I'm pretty sure I've seen a few of them. We're not. This is not that podcast. This is not that podcast, bro. But I'm gonna. I want. You gave what I can only describe in music terms as a banger of a closing keynote at HouseCon.
USecon, yeah.
HouseCon, the Houston Security Conference that is gained world acclaim, and
that
I watched
complex
it.
has, by the way, if you haven't been to that thing,
Seriously, it's huge.
I thought it was tiny. I mean, the first time I went, it was tiny, and then I think the second or third time I went, it was tiny, and now it's like 2,000 people there. So it's gotten to be a real conference.
Yeah. Well, I watched your talk. I walked away from my computer for a bit because I felt like I was going to be angry man shouts at cloud. And then, of course, I was. And then I watched it again, and I was like, son of a... And anecdotally, right, we have been saying some of these things 10, 15 years. Now, back then, it was mostly based on feels because we just didn't have enough data. And now, and I fact checked this, the total addressable market for the whole vulnerability management space is somewhere between 17 and 20.6 billion dollars.
Yeah.
So Rob, right. I feel like
the big three make up about 10 billion of that.
Which confetti out the ears, right? Like, okay, I feel like people are going to put you on a list for what you've been saying. I mean, another list.
I've certainly been getting it from the sidelines. There's a lot of back channeling about me, and I've heard some really fascinating things. Like I'm so dumb they're gonna have to get sock puppets to explain it to me. Was a good one. I'm willfully misrepresenting the state of affairs was another fun one. And then one accused me of, because my former business partner, there was a murder suicide, that I'm so distraught about that Jeremiah needs to intervene because clearly this is related to that and not about the technology. Like there's some real doozies out there about this. So people are very upset. And I think there's several things going on. One is very poor understanding of what I said. Just I wouldn't even call it uncharitable reads, just actually not understanding. So that's one category. I think there's uncharitable reads because I am effectively going to people's homes, and they need, if I win, they lose. And that's not necessarily true, but I think in enough of a context of they could see business decline significantly if I turn out to be right. And so,
and by the way, they should.
I'll leave that to the audience to decide. How about that?
You don't have to say it. We can.
But I do think that they don't have a choice. They're going to die if I win. And so they have to fight because there is no middle ground from their perspective. I actually think there is a middle ground. I think there is a way for them to get more in line with where the future is going. But the incumbents, I think, have a really poor incentive, kind of like a Blockbuster killing their own line of business to embrace streaming media or something. Like, yes, they could have done that, but it would just destroy their existing business, and so therefore they won't, and they'll go out of business. And so I think there's some of that going on. And so bad incentives to understand what I'm talking about, literally just very uncharitable reads because they're trying to disprove something I'm saying, even though I'm not even saying what they are saying that I'm saying. And then there's just sort of the rest of everybody else who's just concerned that change means disruption, and they have certain business processes, they have certain things, and they're worried that I represent a lot of work, and they're not prepared to do a lot of work. But the nice part is I actually represent less work, not more work, because I think that the vast majority of the things the incumbent security vendors are finding simply are never exploited. And if they're not exploited, they kind of, in my mind, fall into a different category. I don't have a word that I love for it, but we've been internally calling it nuln as opposed to a vuln. It's sort of like it's like if you fast forward the clock 1,000 years and no one exploits this thing, is it really a vulnerability? It's something. It's bad. It's a weakness, but it's not actually the thing that we're worried about. It doesn't represent actual risk. And so if you actually try to think about security in a risk context only and forget everything you've learned up to this point about security and something being remotely exploitable or not, like we started like trending what is actually getting used against, let's say, like exploit DB. It's all remotely exploitable vulnerabilities, or anything in CVE list v5 that has has code attached to it bit flipped on, right? And there is next to no overlap between what attackers are using and that list. It's just not a relevant list. It's like 25,000-ish, some in that range of vulnerabilities that have an exploit attached to them. And there's only hundreds of vulnerabilities that are actually being exploited by attackers. So there's no correlation. I mean, not a meaningful correlation anyway.
I think that's, I don't want to bury the lead. Like that's the defining thing, is that of the tens of thousands of vulnerabilities that we're all told to patch, whether, there's the criticals, the ultra criticals, it almost doesn't matter the back. Like we could give the background. I like your background and like how people score them and how these different scoring systems came to be and how nonsensical some of them are, like the CVE CVSS. Yeah. Like the rationale behind that blew my mind, and how completely arbitrary some of this is. Like somebody made up a number to make it look good. Now makes the graph line look stupid. Like that's an obvious one. But I think one of the most salient point for me, and I'll let you continue a second, is that there's so much work that has been put into patching and hand waving around the potential risk that was completely irrelevant for the last 30 some odd years.
Right. And
the only thing that matters is how much money was made on this market getting us to do that.
Right. I mean, I don't want to shit too much on the original people who developed these tools. Like what were they going to do? This is what they had at the time, right? I was there. I was one of those people who felt like those things matter. So I don't blame them, or how about this? I blame myself as much as I blame them, right? Because that was the state of the art. That's what we had. We had CVSS. That's the only thing we had. But now we have a lot more data, like a ton more data. So I did this analysis where I basically mapped anything that had vulnerabilities associated with it, everything I could find. So CVSS, EPSS, vulncheck kev, CISA kev, kev intel when that was a thing, nuclei scripts, Metasploit scripts, exploit DB, VARS database, Mandiant
there's a
M
lot of places that
report.
tell you about this, right?
Yep. Google 0 Day in the Wild and on, right? There's a bunch of them, right? So I grabbed every chunk of data I could find from every one of them to have any sort of scoring or list of things they think matter, right? They didn't overlap, you know, and
crazy.
that was the problem, right? And so I went into it actually kind of naive and hopeful that what I was going to find is that they all clustered in one area, right? They're all really saying the same thing over and over, just different lenses. And maybe there's a couple that sucked, like CVSS was sucked, but maybe the rest were pretty good, and they all kind of like gravitated towards the same answer. They don't, and in shockingly poor correlation at that. You know, the ones that are vaguely correlated, like CISA kev and vulncheck kev, are still very bad. Like CISA kev's like 1300, vulncheck is 4300 or something like that. So it's like, you know, the Venn diagram is, you know, hugely different.
And by the way, just
some of the closest correlation I could find.
Yeah. So hold on. So just quick vocabulary checks. I'm not sure if everybody knows these. Kev is known exploited vulnerabilities in that identified in these different lists.
Well, that's what it's supposed to be. What it actually is, in the sense of CISA kev, is known exploited vulnerabilities for which there is an easy patch and has passed some time horizon. An easy patch. So if it's a very complicated patching system where it would take like huge like forklift upgrade to fix it, it won't end up on the kev. Or if there's no patch, it won't end up on the kev. So people are using the CISA kev thinking that's what it stands for, you know, known exploited vulnerability. That is not what it stands for. I mean, that's the acronym, but that's not what it actually is. So anyway, I spent about a year actually digging into all of this stuff. Like I quietly behind the scenes, just grabbing as much data as I possibly could from everywhere. And this is where I think people want to uncharitably read what I'm saying. Like you're saying people like use or like should use like CVSS this way. I'm like, no. That's what the data shows me. I didn't add anything to any of this. I didn't intentionally try to make something look away. I'm just trying to get some correlation anywhere. And so later on, we did actually get some correlation. There was some. They came from very different parts of the industry. And we can go to that maybe later. But the core thing that was really stood out to me is how poorly they overlapped. Like that just means that everyone's guessing. And if everyone's guessing, we cannot rely on any of the current thinking that we have in this space. It's all broken. And if the VM providers are using any of that data, and it turns out they almost all are. In fact, one of the board members for CVE reached out to me, and he's like, I did some analysis just based on all these conversations we've been having kind of offline. And he's like, I just wanted to see if there was any major vulnerability vendor out there that actually had you rescore CVSS scores the right way, the way the CVSS is designed to be built. And literally none of them do it. Not one of them. So it's not just my imagination that people are misusing CVSS. It's not. I'm not making this up. And I'm not saying they should use it in the wrong way. I'm saying they do misuse it in the wrong way. And so if that's the state of the art, if that's what we've been using for the last 20 years, it makes a lot of sense while we're still getting compromised all the time. You know what I mean? It makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, there's a lot of
think
effort.
about this, right? Yeah, that's right. It's the effort. That's the problem. So like if there's 316-ish thousand CVEs today, right? It's about 1,000 a week at this point. So 50-ish thousand a year, let's call it. And I am working for a big company where I'm getting, you know, let's say 5,000 new CVEs pouring into my inventory of exploits I need to deal with every week or every day or whatever. It's not. Sometimes it's the same CVE like hundreds of thousands of times or whatever, but it's still a lot, right? And then none of them are being exploited, and then everybody's telling me it's a high. Well, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to say I'm going to fix everything from high to low? Because now I'm wasting a bunch of time on a bunch of vulns that are coming in that are piling up in my inventory. And some of these companies we talk to have 8 digits of vulnerabilities. They have well over 10 million vulnerabilities. And we're telling them that's the industry status, fix high to low, just go fix it. And fix the Kev lists first, we'll tell them, then EPSS next, we'll tell them, and then I guess CVSS falls in there somewhere. I don't know. Or maybe CVSS instead of EPSS or something. You rescore everything with some magical tool that doesn't exist. Like that's what we're telling the biggest companies on earth. And they are honestly really sick of this. We did some analysis. We talked to about 100 different VM groups in different companies around. And we asked them the same like 5 or 10 questions. We try to keep it pretty standard. And one of them was kind of an open-ended question. If you could kill one thing about the VM market, like just if you could make it go away today, what would it be, right? And so the answers varied, but not very much. There was about 10 answers that we heard in total, and 2 or 3 of them we heard over and over and over again. And one of the ones that was scary, it wasn't super high on the list, it was maybe 3rd or 4th on the list, was the cost of running vulnerability management has now exceeded the cost of breach. So they know that it is no longer worth running VM programs, period.
Well, because Rob, think about
shouldn't that very much frighten our industry?
100%. I can tell you anecdotally, and with now very old numbers, but going back in the 2000s when I worked for a large enterprise, my responsibility was vulnerability patching for a while. And we're going to people that own these big mid-range systems, right? And we're saying to people that have a 99.99% uptime requirement, hey, I need these 17 vulns patched this month. And they're like, no. Like, but you have to. And the thing that where I always tripped, like the part where like the conversation just hit a wall was why.
Yep.
And we have it. And I felt like we never had,
you change your grade from a B- to a B+, Raf, obviously.
Because the tool says so, Raf. The tool said.
And that's actually one of my biggest beefs is this whole context of what I call stoplight infosec. Anytime you see a constrained list from 0 to 10 or 0 to 100, which by the way is 101, or anytime you see red, yellow, green, or any high, medium, low, or ABCD, it's always the same thing. It's a constrained list. You de facto cannot do math on a constrained list like that. I mean, it's not safe to do it. You can do it, but it's not safe. But we do. What happens when someone sees a number is they think that they can do math on it. But if I just change the number to a grade, I say, how many A's is a B worth? Or vice versa. What does that mean? If I have 10 vulnerabilities that are an F and one that's an A, can I trade? Can I do some amount of some? Can I give? How much is that worth? And by virtue of that not sounding like I'm saying something that's sensical, it's because it is not sensical. It's just that we've converted one weird system into a number, and that number sounds like a thing you can do math on, but you actually cannot do math on that, not safely. And you can prove it actually. If I have a vulnerability that's a 1, and let's call it $1,000 worth of risk, it's like a full replacement laptop cost or something is $1,000. And then I have the world-ending F. Like we all agree this is the world-ending F. Is it only 10 times worse? Is it only $10,000? No, it's going to be billions of dollars. Well, why can't I do that math? Because we're not starting with real math. We're starting with a constrained list that has no bearing at all on actual risk. And so I don't like any of the systems we've currently built because I actually don't think they answer the question, which is why, Raf, when someone's asking, why should I fix this? You can't answer the question.
Right.
But what if I said, instead of it being you should, or there's some compliance mandate that says you have to, that's totally arbitrary and based off of CVS in some cases, by the way, which is even more scary. What if it was, we want to fix. I need $60,000 to retire $9.4 million worth of potential loss. That's a reason, you know. And if you go to the CFO and you have that conversation, they're going to say, well, let me see your math. And so if you hand them your math and your math looks good and it's actual numbers that actually jive with stuff, or they disagree and they're like, actually the fully loaded head count of an employee in the United States is $120 an hour, not $100 an hour or whatever. And you go back and you change it and like, okay, can I have $60,000 to fix $9.4 million worth of risk? And they say, yeah, that's a good bet, right? That's a good exchange of value. In the same way, they would say the same thing about return on marketing investment or return on sales investments. Sure. Finally, we can have a rational conversation with the CFO. And so I think that everything that has this constrained list basically makes it hard for us to do our job.
But Rob, how... I'm going to ask the question that I think everybody's thinking right now is, how do you get out of this arbitrary high, medium, low, or critical high, medium, low informational, right? Because we have to have those.
Well, without me giving,
there's always got to be 5.
Without me giving you the answer, how about I just propose the question to the community? If we could get to dollars and cents, how would we get there? Like what data would we need? And if you can answer that question in your own mind, you will have a sense of where I'm going with things. I don't want to telegraph too much what we're doing too early, because I think here's the real problem. We're actually slowly unveiling more and more and more things. And if I jump to the conclusion before I drag people along with the rationale of why we got to where we are, I think there's going to be a big problem. People are just going to go, well, no, I don't think that's right. It's like, well, how about you go back and read the last couple of months worth of blog posts and LinkedIn posts or whatever. And I think you're going to understand how we got to where we are logically. Let me take you to a complete aside. This is going to seem antithetical and completely out of left field, but I think you'll understand where I'm going with it. So Jared and I are really close friends with the insurance industry. In fact, Jared built the very first cyber warranty at White Hat. We've now helped build like 15 of them. Insurance is one of the biggest markets related to cyber and growing significantly. There's subrogation lawsuits where they're starting to sue security vendors for not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Like, they are very important to our industry and basically ignored by our industry, which is hilarious. But because we're friends with them, we're actually go to lunches and stuff and hang out with these guys. We get to ask them questions. And so at one point I was having conversations with this reinsurer, and he's like, yeah, we have, 5 years of actuarial data now. So we've got enough trend line. We can actually tell what works and doesn't work. I'm like, well, can you tell me what works and doesn't work? He's like, yeah. So he literally just sits down and enumerates everything that actually is working. Now, that list is not very long, Raf. It's not very long.
We always assumed that, though.
Yeah, but now we have data to prove it. Now, there's some caveats to this before I start, because people are going to go, Robert, you're missing this and that, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, I'm not as dumb as I look, right? So the first caveat before I explain anything else, this is only related to claims. So if for whatever reason it doesn't end in a claim, it's not going to get on this list. So for instance, if you're a oil and gas company, with the exception of Colonial Pipeline, or if you're a water or power utility or something, you may never see a claim, but the Chinese or Russian military are breaking into you, right? So that's caveat one, important caveat. Caveat number two is they can't tell what works and doesn't work if the install rate is so small that you can't disprove the null hypothesis is basically the problem.
Fair.
So if anything is really brand new tech or just not widely deployed, they don't know if it works or doesn't work. But there's a lot of things that are very widely deployed that aren't on that list, a lot. Things you've heard of, talked about frequently. So
I give you one.
Well, let me answer what.
Come on, give me one.
List. I'm going to give it to you, and it'll be an interesting conversation actually. So the things that are on there are things that are related to stopping the breach, things that are designed to reduce dwell time, and then there's a couple of random things like DFIR, right, that actually do help dwell time, reduce dwell time. But really, it's more about understanding what the initial access vectors are, right? But things like EDR would be on that first list. Things like deception technology, like Thinks Canary, for instance, would be on that second list. So you can kind of fill it out in your mind, right? So that's the sort of the three categories. And there's maybe like 11 things total on the list. Ironically, vulnerability management was not on the list because it is so bad currently, right? It does not do the thing it's supposed to be doing currently. I think we can get it on that list because I think it's just a matter of making it work properly. But for now, it's not on the list. But here's an even more interesting one. There isn't a single thing related to web application security on that list. Nothing.
You just broke James's heart.
Well, where do you think I came from? You know, I spent like 30 years or whatever in web application security, browser security.
What does that mean? What okay, so it's not on there. What does that mean? What's the conclusion we're supposed to draw?
So you have to know how to read the data, and it's kind of complicated data. So it's not for the faint of heart. You really do have to know quite a bit about security. But so they're not counting things like WordPress, and they're not. First of all, there's no losses really associated with that anyway. But they're really not counting that, and they're also not counting web-based interfaces on like Avanti firewalls or whatever. You know what I mean? Those are sort of a separate category of things. What they mean is custom web-based vulnerabilities. Like if you're like some retailer and you have a custom web app that you built, you're not going to see any losses on your web application. And I don't mean like it's significant. It's like a small amount. I mean, it's basically zero. There's like there really are no losses there. Now that could change, right? So for instance, maybe some vendor is used by a lot of the big companies and suddenly, you know, they all get popped at once or something, right? Or something like that. It's possible that that could happen or something. We kind of sort of saw it when Log4j happened, but that they kind of categorize that slightly separately because it's not really so much that the application was vulnerable. It's that Log4j was vulnerable, then it used it, if that makes sense. So, yeah. But if you're talking about you having some command injection that you wrote or you having SQL injection that you wrote, there are no losses there. And I think that there's several things going on there. Number one, frameworks have gotten way better. Number two, the big companies that have the biggest chance of loss already know that they have the biggest chance of loss. So they've invested heavily in this space. So they're not going to have the loss because the investment's already been made. And then third, well, yeah, I think there's four things. Third, the adversary doesn't really want to waste the time to try to understand any given application. What they want to do is use something like a standard CVE and just blast like go as wide as they possibly can.
See, now that makes a ton of sense based on what every DFIR vendor from CrowdStrike to Mandiant has been saying. Like attackers don't want to spend 2 months learning your custom designed weirdo front end database thing when they could either phish you and get your credentials and you have admin access all over the place, or like RDP into your admin machine and call it done.
Right. So much so that we've accidentally figured out that there aren't that many for-profit hacking groups on the planet. There just aren't. One of the IOC guys that I talked to, who's actually very, very talented in this space, thinks that there's, around 100. I think that there's less than 300, but I don't know the real number. Which makes sense because if you had a really huge population of hacking community out there who were for profit. I'm not talking about nation states. I'm not talking about hacktivists. I'm not talking about security researchers. Those are different, right? I'm talking about people purely trying to hack stuff for profit. It wouldn't make sense that they wouldn't need to diversify because they'd be stepping on each other's toes all the time. So there can't be that many. No matter how I do the math, it just doesn't seem like it could be more than 300. And I think it might be less than 200. actual for-profit hacking groups. And I think that's a small enough group. We could win. Dude, I think that's a winnable game. It's just that we're totally focused in the wrong spot right now. We're focused all on cataloging one more vulnerability. And now we're going to have AI. So we're going to have, instead of 1,000 vulnerabilities a week, we're going to have 10,000 vulnerabilities a week coming in, which is going to overwhelm any sense of any human being able to know anything about vulnerabilities anymore. Like that's already a dead idea, but now it's just going to be absolutely slaughtered. We're going to see a wall as opposed to kind of a nice ramp like we're seeing right now.
Yeah.
And so the entire idea of cataloging them is ridiculous. What we need to focus on is the actual things that are leading to loss, and not just finding yet another vulnerability. And so I'm not saying there's no utility in having that list, but I am saying there's very little utility in fixing everything on that list.
Rob, is the burning question in my head? Sorry, guys, if I'm monopolizing this conversation, feel free to stop me here.
They're playing Minecraft; they don't care. They got high score.
But is this like a polymarket thing, right? When is it predictable? Like, is it predictable where the loss will be as opposed to where the loss was?
Well, these are sentient adversaries, so they can shift on a whim. They can shift just because they had a Diet Coke, right? So no, I don't think it is predictable, which is one of the reasons I'm not a huge fan of EPSS, by the way. But one of, there's many reasons. But Jer and I had this kind of joke for a while. We're like, we should create a pool to see who could guess which vulns were going to be used next.
I mean, you can do that in Polymarket right now, probably.
But listen to the joke. And we thought about it for like 10 seconds. And I'm like, no, the adversaries would win every single time. He's like, exactly. Because they're the only ones who have any fucking clue what they're going to do next.
That's awesome. Then you know exactly what's going to happen. That's brilliant. That's funny. That's both funny and sad. I'm not sure how to feel about that right now. I'm conflicted. Listen, so we're talking about fundamentally changing the problems, how we see the problem space in cyber, from it's limitless and it's impossible, and then trying to fake math rationalize our way through it to something that's rational and math based and risk based. My only problem, Rob, and I'm not crapping on your idea because I think you're onto something, but my only problem is like about 99.98% of the security space doesn't actually understand what the word risk means. Are we?
And even the people who really are absolutely adamant that they do understand it don't understand it, which is interesting. Yeah. You know how you know that the people who are at least on the vendor side definitely don't know what they're doing? It's because they have never added a warranty on their product. Because for them to do that, they would have to have a cutoff point. They would have to say, here's the point at which you can stop fixing. And they know they can't do that because they know they don't know where it is, because they know nothing about the adversary. They've forgotten the adversary even exists. They're not really paying attention to the adversary. They're only focused on the vuln.
Yeah, but I'm listen. I don't have a problem with warranties. I don't have a problem with warranties in general. I have a problem with the fact that warranties have 27 clauses that says if you don't do exactly this on a Tuesday, then I'm not paying.
Fine. I'm just saying, have a cutoff point. Tell me at what point I can stop working. EPSS, tell me when I can stop working. CVSS, tell me when I can stop working. Tell me where the cutoff point is when I can finally say, I don't need to worry about those vulnerabilities.
But it's not incumbent upon us to tell it as vendors. I'll speak for the vendors because I've been here so long. It's never incumbent upon the vendor to tell the enterprise employee to stop working, because then the money dries up and we stop having 74 startups that try to rationalize your way through vulnerability management.
Yes, it's a money problem.
Security does the same thing, right? Like security's never going to tell you stop here because they don't want accountability for.
Correct.
Oh, I told you didn't have to fix that one, and that's where we got owned, right? Like, so you're never going to say, I mean, I remember when I used to do code review stuff and they're like, we just give generic recommendations. I'm not going to tell you how to fix it. You can come back to me 15 times and I'll tell you whether I like your fix, but we're not going to tell you how to fix it.
The beauty of what you're saying, you're almost there. You're just missing one extra sentence or one extra half a sentence because we have no idea what the adversaries are going to do.
Correct.
That's
we really don't.
Actual implied in everything you're saying is you just aren't paying attention to the adversary. But the adversaries are very stuck in their ways. They've been doing the same fucking thing for 20 years. They haven't changed. So according to Manny M. Trends report, which you can feel free to ignore or whatever, there's only 12 new CVEs that were used in 2024. 12. You think that's an insurmountable list to go catalog and go fix those? I mean,
no, but nobody knows what they are. Otherwise, this would be a done deal. Come on, Rob. Like, the catch is we don't know what they are.
Even
so
if we
have
did,
to fix everything.
Even if we did, Raph, I can guarantee you right now, you go to your org and say, hey, we need to patch this. And they'll be like, we can't because of XYZ. Oh,
that's
sorry.
That's a totally different problem. That's a totally different problem.
You know what I mean?
I agree, James, 100%. Yes. So I can't solve the internal incentive alignments. And also we have 1,000 compliance things in our way that prevent us from doing the right thing. And, and also our customers are demanding we fix this other thing because they have a problem on their side or whatever, right? Like, there's a lot of extremely poorly built incentives that our industry has decided to hang their hat on as ways to make money. I think that long term, we're going to have a come to Jesus with the compliance people. I do not think that they are doing what they need to be doing. Let me refocus this conversation slightly. What if we could change the industry to only focus on loss? For the people who don't have losses like government or critical infrastructure, okay, they have a sort of different problem. We'll deal with them as a separate side issue. But for everyone else, let's focus on loss. What things would you invest in if you knew all you had to do was make sure that your board didn't yell at you about loss? You'd make different choices, wouldn't you? You sure wouldn't be running arbitrary scans on your internal network all day and yelling at people about cross-site scripting, would you? You wouldn't be worried about HSTS headers. You wouldn't be worried about a slightly weak SSL certificate, would you? Seriously, I'm asking a question.
Or wordy banners.
Yeah, I mean, like we are wasting untold billions of dollars on absolutely wasted effort. This is not leading to loss. No. And so if you could focus your energies, just theoretically here, I'm not telling you how to do anything. I'm just saying if you could focus your energies only on loss reduction, I have a feeling you'd look very differently at all of the products out there. So if the cost of doing a vulnerability scan outweighs the cost of the actual bad thing happening, which we are hearing from these big companies, by the way.
That's bonkers.
That means there is a rational rejection of our industry. That means that we have overplayed our hand. When subrogation lawsuits are coming in from the insurance industry because we have failed to do the minimum bar of what we say we're doing, we have failed. And now
yet we do tons of it.
And now what's happening is the industry is starting to tighten their belt. And we are not prepared as an industry for what happens next. We have not done our homework. So I've started doing the homework. I'm like out there actually trying to figure all this stuff out. And I'm telling you, man, like we've made a lot of mistakes. And for every new product comes out, I'm looking at, like, I'm having a really hard time seeing how this fits into this new world order where loss is the thing that matters, or where if you only care about breach because you have no losses, where that matters, right? But like, if you're sitting out there telling me like we're gonna give you like 10% more whatever like cost reduction in your cloud compute using AI SOC analysis, blah 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 blah, I'm like, nope. Like, no, you're not going to do that. You're going to waste a bunch of fucking time and money, and there's huge hidden costs and everything you're talking about. And no, we need to be really hyper focused here. And that list of things, which I will publish soon, by the way, I'm actually publishing it quite soon. I've already written, I just need to put it out. That list, which is short, I think it's like 11 or 12 things or something, will, I think, be the roadmap for where all future investment really needs to focus if we actually care about loss. And then you'll be looking at what's not on that list and going, why isn't it on that list? Why isn't it there? And there's 2 reasons it's not that, well, 3 reasons. It's either too small, it can't disprove the null hypothesis. It doesn't work at all, which, that's really telling, or we accidentally won. It's secure enough. We've already over-engineered that area. We don't need to invest more there.
I wonder how many. God, oh man! All right, the show's gonna go a little bit longer. I'm sorry if you're done on the treadmill and you're like, wait, why are they still talking? I wonder, Rob, how many. And Jim, this is something I think maybe near and dear to your heart too. Is I wonder how many of these things, these parts of enterprise, just enterprise IT and behaviors, we're going to find that oops, we've actually done a good enough job. We've actually secured this thing. It's okay now. It's okay to leave this alone as is.
For now.
For now.
To be clear, if we do our job in the VM space, I expect them to start pivoting back to things like web applications or whatever. Or I expect them to go from a handful of hundreds of CVEs that they're using totally ever to maybe thousands or tens of thousands. But right now, why would they bother? No one's forcing them to shift. No one's adding any cost to them.
Yeah, but we've been talking about raising the cost to the attacker for so long, and we've already managed to raise the cost to ourselves.
We don't do it. Yeah, we've increased our own costs. We've done nothing. Might I add. We've done nothing for the adversary. Their costs are unperturbed. That said, there are tools and technologies that are actually making a difference, and I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So there are companies that are really actually moving the needle. But compared to the size of our industry, if our industry is 100, they're 5% of our industry. The vast majority of the companies in our industry are not moving the needle.
So what? We just I mean,
there needs to be a massive readjustment is what
I was gonna say. It feels like the red wedding's coming.
It is coming. And
you can almost feel it though.
If you're listening to this podcast and you're at all concerned about you having a job in the next 5 to 10 years, you really need to be thinking about this, because there are companies that will survive and there are companies for which there is zero value at all in their existence. They do not move the needle. And I think we're going to have better and better tooling to identify which is which very shortly. I don't think I'm going to build that, but I think people who are smart are going to need to build it to figure out where they spend. And they're going to start publishing that information, because why not? Why not help the rest of the industry out to figure out where you should and shouldn't be spending?
Rob, I think the insurance industry is going to, at least a part of it that deals with the ones that deal with cyber, are going to look to real data from breaches from the DFIR companies, from the class action suits, from the after action, right? After the root cause analysis, RCAs of these things. They're going to take that data. They're going to hire some of them. I know lots of really, really smart cyber people that work in cyber and insurance. And you're like, but why would you do that? Because I think that's where the answer lies. It's not, man, I have seen some really shit ROI calculators in cyber. And every time somebody comes up with one, I'm like, that is verifiably nonsense. Well, it's the best we've got. And it's okay, that maybe, but I think insurance has better. And now that we're finally starting to collect data, I think now it's starting to show.
But here's the thing. Insurance, they're very smart and they're also very dumb. They know a lot about insurance. They know about loss. They know some stuff about claims and how things happen somewhat, but they really don't know security like we know security. That is not their core area that they're focused on.
For
So
now.
if we put our, I don't know, unless you're talking about Coalition, those guys are smart, but the rest of them are not that smart. They don't know what we know in this group, right? We just know a lot more about the different areas and different things you can pick at. And so if we put our head together and we're like, look, how do we get better data? Like way better data. Like forget all the stuff, forget getting Fortinet firewall, fire hose stuff of just garbage noise of like pen testers and like, bug bounty guys hammering it all day and calling that indicators of threat. Like, what are you doing? Like that is garbage data. And like anyone who's seriously looking at that and saying that's real data, I mean, what are you doing? But there are real sources of data that we have as an industry. There are real places we can say this is an infection or this is exfiltrating data. Like we can find that. And that is so wildly more useful for figuring out what is and isn't working, how things are moving around, what bad guys are actually using. Like we just haven't put our head together as an industry. Like really, we're not thinking in the way the adversaries are thinking at all.
Well, there's been no incentive, Rob. There's been no incentive because money kept flowing. Enterprise kept buying. CISOs kept implementing. The feedback loop of money from investor or VC to CISO kept coming. So they kept buying more. And every time somebody would go, but that thing doesn't work, they're like, yeah, but we really don't know it works. So let's just keep going. And we're at a point, and this is, I've heard more than one.
It has so much technical debt. It drives me crazy.
Well, and part of it is our own tooling is joining technical debt now. But I've heard more than one CISO recently tell me in probably, gosh, you know who you are because you guys listen to the podcast. At least the two of you that we've had this conversation with last week was like, I can't buy anymore. And everybody's showing up. You got to tell me why I'm adding this, where in my risk register or things that I need to worry about this is going to solve. And there's just nothing. There's just no real there's just no real data there. There's no real there. And that's, dude, it's 30 years. It's disappointing.
It's gotten too big too, like as an industry to try to shift it. I mean, we've gotten huge, right? I mean, with compliance coming in with all these different pieces. And I think to your point, Raph, about incentive, there's a lot of people now floating into the industry that want to keep the status quo of I'm doing what I'm doing. Everything's working. It's not necessarily about the am I securing it? It's me virtue signaling that I say I'm securing something.
It's just like
but I'm going to keep the status, right? Like, I mean, you talk about web application security. We're going to sit here and we're going to we're going to build our program up. You see it all the time on LinkedIn. People like, this is the new thing, like hottest topic, web app security. But to your point, how many of that actually outside of, credential stuffing, getting into applications. I mean, it's been a decade since we saw TJ Maxx get hit with a SQL injection. Like that's not the custom. Who's hacking all your custom websites is the bug bounty programs. And then they're sitting there putting it out there. I bet most of the things you see of a data breach for custom apps was a researcher filing an article on it and not actually dumping data.
Right. So I used to run hackers.org and slackers.org. We had this thread called So It Begins, and it was something like 100 pages with maybe 20 comments per page. So call it some in the neighborhood of, 2,000 cross-site scripting exploits that we published. So if you're thinking about it, here's a group of hackers who are openly publishing examples to and working exploits of some of the largest companies on earth. In fact, all of the largest companies on earth, anybody we could think of that we could find. That's surely sign of exploitation. Great. Where's the loss? Who lost money? I mean, surely somebody like had a minor reputational damage while they, had to go patch something real quick so they didn't look stupid. But there was no loss. There was no like credit card stolen. There was no like we didn't get the secret recipe for Campbell's soup or whatever. We got nothing because that wasn't what we were doing. But if you conflate bug bounties and hackers and researchers that are just trying to figure things out with actual people trying to steal the money out of the credit card database or whatever, or PII or whatever they're after, you are definitely not understanding where the actual adversaries are. that like these are different people, different groups entirely, different motives, different tools, different thinking. One can spend all day on a website to get themselves a black hat presentation. The other has got to do this like hundreds of times per day. Like they don't have time to wait around to figure out, if I could just flip this one bit here or there. I mean, yes, it's vulnerable. I'm not saying these things aren't vulnerable. They're absolutely vulnerable, but it doesn't matter. No one's attacking them.
Well, to the point, a little bit to the point too, there, most of those custom web apps outside of your social media, like a lot of those are, you have to sign in, you have to have accounts, you have to have all these different things that, to be fair, during most testing, pen testing, bug bounty testing, all that stuff, what are you given? You're given multiple accounts. You're given the cheat codes that, again, your true adversary would not typically have, right? So yes, they are vulnerable. There are issues, but is that the path of least resistance that somebody's coming to actually get into your system?
Now, to be fair, there is one thing I am truly worried about that falls way outside of all of this stuff. We have seen some examples where people are paid low hundreds of dollars to give up the credentials from the inside to external adversaries to allow them to compromise whatever. Like, so they are given the cheat code for a couple hundred measly dollars, right? That could change things a lot if that takes off. But if that doesn't take off, then adversaries are going to keep doing the same thing that they've always been doing.
Rob,
spray and pray.
To underscore the point, do you remember Spectre and Meltdown? How much industry literal meltdown there was? How many people lost their damn minds over this thing? And I want to do
add in Rowhammer, and you have a trifecta.
Right, and I want to do a where are they now?
Well, they're still there. They're still vulnerable. You can still find tons of things that are vulnerable to it today. So why aren't adversaries doing it? Why aren't they exploiting Rowhammer all the time? I have probably 5 machines in my office that are vulnerable to it right now. Why aren't they using it?
Because it's the level of difficulty. So the effort and payback for it, the math doesn't work.
Because the ROI isn't there. If we start thinking in dollars and cents, like actually start thinking that way instead of pretending like we think that way, we're going to have a very different view of our adversary. Like, they are people with budgets and they have time, and sometimes they run out of that time. And just like we don't have time to fix every vuln, they don't have time to explore every vuln. They got to do what's expedient.
Hey,
like
Rob,
we really need to think more like them.
So we've got 2 minutes, and I have to drop in 2 minutes. But the big question is this a technology problem? Is this a process problem? Is it a combination of both? Is it something else?
I don't think there's a huge technology leap that needs to be made now. I think this is mostly just our industry not really thinking the same way the adversary is, and therefore not spending the same way the adversary needs you to spend to have any impact on what they're doing. Not to say that everyone is doing it wrong, but I think what really happened is a lot of people kind of fell into the right idea as opposed to are actively thinking that this is the right path. In fact, when I talk to some of them, they seem shocked that I'm excited about their product. They're like, really? You're interested in this? I'm like, yes, because you guys are moving the needle. It's super interesting, actually. But a lot of companies are just not doing anything. In fact, in many ways, they're making things worse. I wouldn't be terribly surprised if the cyber insurance industry said they were never going to allow a premium to be written if you have Fortinet firewalls, for instance, because for whatever reason, that is not very good code.
All right. Well, James had to drop. We ran this way over, but I'm hopeful that some of this sticks and makes sense, man. If for no other reason, then there's got to be a better way. Because the hamster wheel. I mean, many of us have died on this hamster wheel. We haven't moved. We were in the same spot we were years and years ago.
Thanks for having me, Ralph.
I don't know what else to say.
I appreciate it.
All right. Well, folks, I don't know if that was a depressing conversation or not, but at least I can say we know what we should be looking for at the end of the tunnel, and at least we know that we're not at the end. So there's there's that, right? Like we've identified the journey. Maybe Rob has the answer, maybe not. But I will tell you that like the answer is not what we're doing today. That we can all, I think, agree on. And watch this space. We're gonna Rob, we're gonna follow you along on your journey. And I keep reading your stuff.
Probably wise.
I mean, look, because the reality is, like, look around, you guys. The only thing that's happening is the vendors make a ton of money, and we all on the industry side burn out, and it's harsh. And all right, everybody else is gone. Rob, just me and you. But I'm going to say on behalf of Jim and James, thanks for doing this, folks. Thanks for sticking along this long. This is almost an hour, but this was a great conversation. I hope it was worthwhile. I hope you got something out of it. And if you have something to throw back at us, if you've got data to disprove, prove, argue with, or want to tell me that my conspiracy socks are true and that aliens do exist, don't identify yourself, but just be out there, man. It's okay. We know you're here. We know you're here. So from the Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast and my awesome guest here, Rob, thanks for listening. We'll catch you guys another time, another place on another Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. Ciao. Bye. All right.